Are you a virgin if you haven't seen Rocky Horror Picture Show live, or are you a virgin if you just haven't seen it?
Oh, it's alive.
Fuck, so I'm still a virgin? Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash. If you're joining us again, welcome back. You've arrived on a rather special night. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the party. We are a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a movie is a hack,
Total joke, a waste of time,
or a slash.
Totally killer, pun intended.
We believe horror is for everyone, and as such, we're reviewing these films based on the perspective we've gained from our varying walks of life and the flavors of fear we fancy most. My name is Chris, I'm your friendly neighborhood slasher enthusiast, and this week I'm joined by the Superfly Space Guy, Mac.
That's a rather tender subject.
And the classic horror connoisseur, John.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
This week we're commemorating the 50th anniversary of Tim Curry's feature film debut.
And if you support the show, you'll also be able to get to check out our B-sides, which are free right now. You'll all be able to check it out, so stick around at the end because we're going to get into all the zany, wild shit that happens at the live showings of this movie.
This week's film was originally adapted from a 1973 stage musical that paid tribute to science fiction and B-horror films. Brace yourself, Mac. The film opened in the U.S. in September 1975, but was pulled from theaters due to incredibly small audiences. But when midnight screenings began in 1976, the movie found a second life. Audiences started talking back to the screen, dressing up, and performing alongside the film, giving rise to the long-running tradition of shadowcasts. The film became the longest continuously running theatrical release in history. And over the decades, it's earned more than $166 million in the box office, has been restored by the Walt Disney Studios restoration team, and has even been preserved in the National Film Registry by the Library of Congress. This week, we're talking about one of the most popular cult films of all time, the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Who's seen this one before?
It's been many years, but I indeed have seen this previously.
For sure. I have seen this many, many times. I've seen it as just watching the movie. I've seen it at the live showings at midnight many, many times with friends. I have such fond memories of this movie, actually, because I grew up watching this movie primarily as a teenager, going to those live shows on Friday nights with friends. And man, what a time it was. It's truly an experience like no other.
Well, I haven't. Okay, I should be clear. I know of the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've seen clips of it. I've seen so many images of Tim Curry. This movie is inevitable. It is always going to be lurking around the corner. You got to run into it at some point. But I actually know this movie more from Glee, I realize in retrospect, than I do from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I think it's because I've always been scared as hell to watch this movie. Not like at home. I just happen to not watch it at home. But I have been invited to go see it live in a theater. It's back at the Narrow Theater in Norfolk. I kept getting invited, and then someone found out I was a Rocky Horror virgin, and they said, you gotta strip down to your underwear. I was like, no the fuck I won't. Absolutely not. So I've always just thought that if I get subjected to this movie in public, I, as a massive introvert, would simply perish on sight. So I have actually avoided it for that reason.
I mean, it is a time. I think, the best things, like, it wouldn't be great for you because you probably have a meltdown, but literally the way to go into it is for your friends not to tell you anything about what being a virgin to the Rocky Horror Picture Show is, and you just go in there, and then all of a sudden you get called out. You know what I mean?
No
and that's,
fucking way.
That's really how you have to do it.
Absolutely not. Let me tell you this, Sean. You've worked in my place of work. It's a large place of work. On your first day, unbeknownst to you, they make you dance in front of everybody.
That is true.
Imagine doing that, but like naked in your underwear, throwing shit at a screen. Absolutely not. No fucking way. The body dysmorphia is too damn high. No, folks. So going into this movie, knowing that that's the kind of energy that's associated with the Rocky Horror Picture Show, I expected camp and comedy. and people getting in their underwear. This was the extent of that. I also, to be fair, I expected incredible things from Tim Curry.
For sure. I mean, it's definitely everyone. I think when you think of this movie, you think of Tim Curry for sure. He's like the face of the film. So you're right away, you're going to be expecting to see some kind of wild performance from Tim Curry. You may have heard some things, seen some references. You may have also heard some songs floating around out there. If you put on any kind of Halloween playlist on any kind of streaming service, odds are you're going to get Time Warp or something in there. You know what I mean? It's just going to be included for sure.
I think you should mostly plan to be entertained when you're going into this, because that's the whole deal here. I just kind of forgot, though, how weird of a watch it is. It's very entertaining, very energetic, but it's funky. Like, the story's weird. What happens scene to scene gets weird. It's strange, but that just keeps you going because you're kind of like, what on earth am I watching?
Yeah, I somehow expected it to be less weird, even though I knew it was going to be kind of fucking weird. I wasn't prepared mentally for just how weird this movie was, and how dare I, honestly, shame on me. When people say they're going to dress up, get naked, throw things at the screen, and do shadow casting, I feel like I should already have a sense of what's about to go down, but this movie was a lot. And I'm not saying a lot in a negative way. But what was really special is, even though I was a Rocky Horror Picture Show virgin, I got to experience this movie with other people. And those are the fine folks of Hacker/Slash University, aka our Discord server. And I got to watch this movie with a live stream via ChrisFlix with all of them. And when I tell you guys, this was the biggest turnout we've had for a watch party, or I think almost any Discord event we've ever had. B, we had people coming on camera and dancing with the movie. Incredible. And C, we had people who had made signs and were deploying all the props in the moment. It was incredible. I was both wildly confused by everything was happening, but also deliriously delighted.
What a cool experience. I bet I was trying to get into the watch party. Like, I just was driving, so I just wanted to be in the chat and like listening to the film and just seeing what was going on. But like, the audio wasn't working, probably for my own safety. And, you know, the universe didn't want me in a live stream of a film while driving my car. So I guess, you know, I can't be that mad at it. But it did, in the moments I was popping into the chat, feel like it was popping off, and it looked fun, full of energy. And that's what this movie really is. It's fun. It's full of energy. The experience that you got just in the watch party, imagine being immersed in a theater where people are just going nuts, right? Like, you've just, like, even thinking back to my first time, like, it just really trying to soak it all in. There's just so much going on. And for me, I think watching this movie back again, because it has been a few years, admittedly, since I've watched this movie, it was full of nostalgia because it brought me right back to those Friday nights back home in the Valley where I grew up, and just getting together with friends and getting a little weird and having a little fun for the midnight live shows. But the best way I can describe this movie, for those who haven't seen this one yet, it is truly a wild mix of campy absurdity, sexual rebellion, you could say. It's pure fun, and it just makes you want to come back to this movie again and again, because even my wife, we were watching this one back together, she's like, I forgot how fucking wild this movie is. She's like, it feels chaotic, but it's also just fun.
I really want to just drive this home here, because watching this movie for the first time in full, watching the complete thing, not just listening to the soundtrack, as I've listened to basically my entire life at this point, not just looking at clips from Glee or that Glee episode that covered Rocky Horror. It felt like I had been finally led into a club that I've been circling the perimeter of for 35 years. And it feels wild that it took me this long to actually watch this movie, but man, experiencing this with our community specifically. And you talk about, like, imagine this with a theater of people who are going fucking nuts. I don't like people like that. I mean, I've had bad experiences here in theaters, but if I could be physically in a theater with our community, with our chosen folks, you know what I mean? That would be really special, because it felt like this experience was just as much about us as it was about the movie, which is really cool.
That just means that we now have to put together a hacker / meetup, rent out a theater, figure out how to get this fucking live show going, who we can get to do the actual like shadow casting. We'll get all the props. We'll have a great time. And it'll all just be the hacker / family.
Okay, that I could actually get into. There was a time where I was in a lengthy situationship with a girl who told me that she did shadow casting for Rocky Horror in Orlando, and I never understood what that meant until now. In this moment, I realized, like 10 years after we fucking stopped talking, that's crazy.
Wild.
Yes, okay, we can figure it out, Sean. We can figure it out.
Yeah, crazy. And you know what? I think there's also actually a TV show out there that I have never explored. That I think for me, outside of like this movie itself, is a little bit surprising. I did not know that they made like another version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, so I definitely have to check that out. Everything you said just opening this episode, I think to some that have not seen it or don't know a lot about this movie, I think it's just so surprising that this film holds that title for the longest theatrical run in history, because a lot of people may not know what the live shows are, and the fact that this does continuously play in theaters from time to time since its release in 1975, which is absolutely incredible. But if we're talking about the actual movie itself, I would have to say probably the most surprising thing about this movie is probably thinking back at 1975 when it was released, how bold it was for its time. For someone to put out a movie as wild as this, it's definitely something that had to have been a little bit surprising in 1975. I think way ahead of its time for sure, with the unapologetic celebration of gender fluidity and sexual liberation. And I think it probably just was a culture shock at the time. Who knows? I wasn't alive in 1975, but that's just my presumption. Also, Tim Curry's performance and pure vocal power are on another fucking level in this movie. So absolutely crazy.
If you've seen this before, you know what to expect. But if it's been many years, you just forget how bold he is and just incredibly intense in his role, and also how sexualized he is. And it's Tim Curry, and it's weird. I don't know. It's strange for me to remember that this was, 50 years ago, but still, this person is capable of being Pennywise and Frankenferter.
Right?
And it's absolutely insane and amazing.
Love that.
Yeah, man. The first thing I ever saw Tim Curry in was the It miniseries. And then I saw him later on when he did Home Alone. To now see him in this, it's just wild to me to know that this was his first movie. This is crazy to me. But I think the biggest surprise I had was by what actually takes place in the movie. And again, we talked about how there's a lot going on. It's pretty wild. But I was surprised that I was actually a little conflicted, and it's complicated for me. So I've always seen this movie embraced by the LGBTQ community. I've always seen that. And I have always felt like a super bad gay for not having seen it. I'm someone who I feel like has existed on the outskirts of that. So I thought that this was pure good times kind of vibe. But there's some elements in this movie that made me pause and think like, wait, what? Like, this is what people were cool with this, right? It struck me weirdly. I think if I had grown up watching this movie and saw this back in my youth, it wouldn't have even fazed me probably. But watching this now with the experiences that I've had in my life and at 35 years old, I'm like, oh, okay. And it's not to say that it ruins the movie or that it should be taken too seriously or anything like that. But I think in reality, I have some complex feelings beneath the surface on this one. And it has less to do with the movie itself and more so to do with this tension that I feel and harbor on a regular basis with having to navigate even my own gender expression in the society that we exist in. It is a tough thing. We can dive into that more in terms of like an exploratory discussion in the spoiler zone if we may, but this movie scratches a lot more than I think it might just be more deeply internalized. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm saying it's an interesting thing and not what I was expecting. I was honestly fascinated to see just what unfolds in this movie, but also learned that there's significant debate about whether it's transphobic. There's a huge discussion surrounding this movie. So it's a lot to chew on for sure.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for sure. I definitely think like different time, especially if you haven't seen this movie until now. Who am I to have any say in any of this, right? But from what I've gathered, it's just the imperfect nature of the film that I think people like gravitate towards. And yeah, it's not perfect. It doesn't represent the LGBTQ community super well, right? But it is accepted by a lot of that community, maybe for its imperfections, from what I've gathered. I don't know. Who am I to say? But I think when we think about the movie, and maybe like we're a horror podcast, we're reviewing horror movies. It's the Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? How frightening is this scary movie, this horror musical, if you will, right? And I don't know that it is all that frightening, right? I think according to Richard O'Brien, there's the skeleton in the clock that may have been rumored to be a real life skeleton belonging to the woman who commissioned the clock, which I think in and of itself, if that were to be true, would be probably the most frightening thing about this entire film. I think it even got auctioned off in 2002 for like 35,000 pounds, which is kind of funny. So whoever has that clock, maybe they can let us know. Is that a real skeleton in there?
Skeletons in your closets, but when we've all come out of the closet, we go into the clocks.
Go into the clock, man. I don't know. All in all, yeah, the Rocky Horror Picture Show, not going to be a scary film in any sense. It's a parody of some classic science fiction, horror flicks, so it's going to be more campy and playful than scary, for sure. That's what you'll find.
100% agreed. It's not really, I mean, I know it's a horror film, but is it, that's kind of how you feel watching it. Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, it's set in the universe and everything, and it's paying homage to a bunch, but it's not a scary movie. Not at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's because this movie leans into absurdist comedy, and that's okay. Squint your eyes just right. You can perhaps find some specific things that maybe the scary thing is what lurks inside of us all along, right? And there's a lot to pull in terms of it being less about the movie and more about the circumstance in which this movie grows a cult following. Imagine and place yourself in a world where you are finding your community solely in midnight screenings of this movie, and that's where you finally find your people. Wouldn't it be incredible if this movie got the reception that it deserved in the broad daylight? That would be something, right? Instead of having to grow in the midnight scene. Again, it has nothing to do with this movie even trying to do anything remotely frightening. However, it is a little fucking violent. It was more violent than I was expecting it to be. And that was something that caught me off guard. But in reality, there's nothing like Rocky Horror. And I say that knowing that there's a lot of other horror movies. There are a lot of other musical horror movies. And this movie was also billed against Phantom of the Paradise. So it's not even that there's not other campy, rock-ish type of musicals, but this one specifically blending sci-fi and horror B-movies, dripping with camp, dripping with gender expression and fluidity, feels more like a reclamation of tropes versus mocking tropes. And I think that's really significant because it creates a space in which marginalized communities feel like this is radical, but in a way that gives permission to be bold and to be proud and to experiment with identity, to bend gender rules, to claim visibility in the darkness of a theater. Like there's a lot to really soak into, but also frame that within the historical context of when this movie was made and where it existed and why it has been so persistent over the last 50 years is just wild to really unpack and soak in.
It really does successfully mash up so much that makes it stand out. I mean, you've got the whole 50s B movies, you've got classic horror film, glam rock, Broadway, comedy, camp, all of it smushed together. And it just feels so independent. It feels like the word indie truly belongs to this film.
Yeah, 100%. This is a very interesting film because really on one end of the spectrum, it feels wildly original, but yet totally derivative on the other end of that spectrum, right? Like you would argue that because it does blend horror and sci-fi, comedy, glam rock, musical theater, it blends all of that together and turns it into something that had basically never been done before on screen. Like when you think of all those things together, it has to be original from that aspect. So even though it's referencing tons of other movies in this movie, it still feels fresh and completely original, which I feel like is hard to pull off.
It really is. And I think another element that may have been a little hard to pull off for this movie, and this is where it actually takes a little bit of a dip for me, is it's really the ending. And it's not even that it's executed terribly by any means, but because there's just so much happening, there's a big tonal shift at the end of this movie. And in a moment where it could have just chosen to cleanly tie things up, look, this is a movie that's absurd. And because it's absurd, it boldly swings into surreal and bleak territory that just, it feels like it contrasts with all the chaos that we just went through with all these musical numbers. I'm not going to spoil any specifics here, but I think this ending sticks with you long after, and not because it's even in the catchy way that I think the rest of the movie is, but because it feels like almost like a curtain call in its own way of just fucking absurdity.
Yeah, it's like that old Chappelle skit where they have like the wrap it up, sign or button or whatever that was. That's what this feels like at the end, where it's like, all right, we're done. Finish the story. Let's get on with it. We don't have to make it too interesting, although it is very interesting. It's as weird as the rest of the movie, and I think I'll give it credit for at least being consistent there.
Yeah, it is definitely, I mean, you said it, like, as weird as the rest of the movie. It is a tough one with this ending for sure. I agree. Like, I do think it kind of falls off a little bit when we get towards the end. I like a lot of pieces to the ending of this movie, including a very special nod to one of my favorite classic horror characters. I love when that shows up, right? And we get some awesome sci-fi campy vibes that I think are really prevalent in the ending. But at the same time, it does sort of feel like a rush where it doesn't really feel like we built to the strong ending that we wanted compared to the absolutely electric first half of the movie. But what I think you might not know is that depending on which version you watch, you might just get an extra little song segment, because in the UK version, if you can find that, you get the superheroes song segment at the end, whereas the US version that we probably are streaming right now does not include it.
Damn, bro, there's a bonus track?
There's a bonus track.
Okay, well, guess now I gotta get a VPN going. Listen, I can't wait to see how this movie shakes out into its ratings, hopefully as iconic as the film itself. But before we get there, Sean, how would you describe the Gore score?
Well, it's really camp over carnage in this one, for sure. Even when violence happens, it's exaggerated and theatrical rather than realistic and shocking. So there is the occasional unsettling imagery with hints of, maybe cannibalism, but it's really bizarre and satirical rather than graphic. So it really is just earning this one a low Gore score with a high dose of camp.
And what about the animal report?
I think we're feeling pretty good here. All good in the hood.
Well, let's go ahead and get into our ratings. The Rocky Horror Picture Show, celebrating its 50th anniversary after being released in 1975. Was it a hack or a slash?
We've said it earlier, but this film is just a wild mishmash of sci-fi, horror, rock, musicals, all sorts of stuff. It somehow just works better than it has any right to. It's super campy. It's outrageous. It's got a lot of style, but strangely, sincerity somewhere mixed in there as well, even with all that chaotic mess. I think Tim Curry is the standout star here, and he steals every scene that he's in. And it's like a spectacle. One after the other, every scene that he's in. So 50 years later, I mean, it seems like it was only yesterday, but it still feels like a slash.
The Rocky Horror Picture Show it's really more than just this cult classic, right? It's this glitter-soaked love letter to the B movies of the past, honestly, when you think about it. I think Richard O'Brien created the Rocky Horror Picture Show out of his deep affection for classic science fiction and horror, and you can kind of feel that passion stitched into every scene of this movie. I think the film parodies the golden age of sci-fi, pulling directly from the very movies it name drops in its unforgettable opening number, science fiction double feature. Great song. And for me, it hits even harder knowing that it riffs off of one of my favorite movies of all time, Frankenstein, 1931, right? But what makes this movie so fascinating is the way that it blends this affection for old school horror with camp, the glam rock, a little splash of pure chaos. And Mac, you were talking about it. Tim Curry as Frankenferter commands the screen with one of probably the most iconic performances in cult cinema history. And at the end of the day, This movie may be a stitched together parody, but just like Rocky himself, it's alive with energy, joy, irresistible weirdness. And I think the midnight showing of the live shows for this movie make this movie even better with all of the fan participation. And if you know, you know, but it makes this movie even more special. So for me, between the time warp, Eddie's rock and roll rebellion, and Frankenferter's electric charm, this movie slashes its way into cult classic immortality, and it's a slash that'll have you shivering with anticipation every time you press play.
Wow. Well, hey, far be it from me to stop a good time. This movie could, especially in this day and age, there's so much out there. This movie could easily be dragged across the coals for what could be described as very problematic aspects and material. But in all reality, I think this movie exists in a time capsule and has to be acknowledged for having evolved into something so much bigger than I think anyone could have imagined when this initially came out in 1975. And I really want to watch it again to fully soak everything in, because there's a lot to dissect. There's a lot I think I disagree with in this movie. There's a lot that I think maybe even doesn't even need to be in the movie. But what I find significant is how far it leans into that absurdist comedy that we've been talking about. This movie is credited with being such a moment of awakening for so many people, even beyond the quality of the actual movie. And it's a film that inspires communities to come together. And that is wild to me. This movie has humans buying rice and bringing toast and throwing it at screens. This movie has people shouting obscenities every single time characters are introduced on screen. That is insane to me. If this movie can coordinate and unite this many people, then it's because it's in some ways liberating, it's campy, it's funny, and it's a cornerstone of queer cinema. Listen, Tim Curry, we've talked about it. He's unforgettable. But I think the biggest thing about this movie is that I walked away feeling like I had gained not just a movie, but an experience. Anything that makes you feel that way has got to be a slash. So with that, the Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975 has earned a universal slash. Now, you can find this movie streaming online, but we have so much more to say when we get into the spoiler zone in just a bit. We'll be right back.
Tonight's episode of Hack or Slash is brought to you by the Frankenferter Hotel, the crown jewel of Transylvania's intergalactic hospitality scene. Looking for accommodations that are strange, but oh so nice? Check in with us and discover why guests never want to leave, though some do mysteriously disappear into the lab. At Frankenferter, our beds are big enough for Brad, Janet, and Rocky. Don't worry, you won't find any riffraff here, though you may encounter the occasional magenta lighting at the midnight pool party. Our complimentary room service includes toast, meatloaf, and maybe even a man carved to your specifications. Housekeeping, handled by Columbia, she'll tap dance through your suite before you can even say time warp. And of course, every booking comes with VIP access to the Castle Floor Show, where sequins are mandatory and inhibitations are strictly prohibited. So whether you're here for pleasure, creature creation, or just a stiff drink served by a hunchbacked handyman, the Frankenferter Hotel has you covered, literally, in fishnets. Remember, it's just a jump to the left and then a step to the right. So don't just sit there with your hands on your hips. Reserve your stay now at the Frankenferter Hotel.
Welcome back, folks. We're now entering the spoiler zone for the Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975, which has earned a universal slash. Now, there's a lot to dissect here and a lot to discuss. But before we get there, let's go through those kills.
Well, yeah, I think you said it, Chris. Like, you're not expecting going into this one thinking, even as the movie starts, that you're going to see like a really violent film where you're going to get like a whole bunch of kills. And it's not that we even get a whole bunch of kills, but you might be surprised to find that we do actually get 4 solid deaths in this movie. And even no, like, we definitely get one early on, right? But then the other 3 happen at the end. So like, as you're progressing through the movie, it's like, are we going to get any deaths, or where is this story going to end up? And I think it's really interesting, but we do get 4 solid deaths. So I'm really curious, which one of these had you jump into the left, step into the right, doing the time warp again?
Okay, is it anybody but Eddie's death?
Right.
I mean, listen, these motherfuckers killed a guy named Meatloaf and served him for dinner. That's wild.
It is wild, actually. I just didn't actually connect the dots to his name being Meatloaf and actually being served for dinner. That's wild. Oh, man. Good times. I mean, yeah, great death for sure. It really kind of set a different tone in that moment, because it went from like zany and like musical numbers to a really horrific like play of events.
That is wild to see Tim Curry wield a weapon in the middle of a musical number. It's giving Sweeney Todd, but way more campy. That is crazy to me. And to see that kill go down, and to see when Tim Curry emerges from there, I was just like, oh, wait, what? Did that just happen?
Yep, it sure did. Probably went in his portfolio for it,
It is a pretty big kill to throw in, compared to the other kills where we get laser beams. Mm-hmm. We got a sharp object to the head on a beloved musical artist. But yeah, the other kills are fun, though. I think the lasers are a good time. Being a sci-fi fan, anytime we get to see a little laser gun, I'm here for it, especially when it's as silly looking as that one. Columbia getting shot by like accidentally scaring Riffraff with her scream. Like, she screams at him. He's like, oops, I shot her too quick. Like, that was great. That was just a pure moment of comedy for me.
I love that Mac's favorite part of this is little laser pew pew.
I mean, that's what the rest of these kills are, right? It's all getting shot with that, antimatter laser gun or whatever. And that's where like the like you said, the movie takes like a really drastic turn towards the very end of the movie. Like, you're not expecting that at all, right? We're not expecting to see that happen, and like all of a sudden we got this really heavy like sci-fi I'm from outer space kind of thing, and we're shooting you with these lasers. It's very like campy, the lasers. The effects are terrible, right? It reminds me of like if I was going to like a maybe like a David Bowie concert with a light show or something, but absolutely hilarious getting shot with those lasers. And yeah, man, they were just kind of fun, all 3 of them. You got Columbia getting shot, you got Frankenferter getting shot, that whole scene, and then you've got Rocky Horror, with the kind of like the playoff of King Kong climbing the tower with Frankenferter on his back, you know what I mean? It's just fun.
Yeah, I also just want to point out that when we got the laser little pew-pews out, I was really thrown back to Plan 9 from Outer Space.
Yeah, for sure.
And of course, that's like the idea, right? We want to take all these old sci-fi movies and really bring it to life. But that's where I was. How many Johnny Depp references am I going to make in one episode? I don't know. We'll see. But I also just want to highlight, because you talked about Rocky climbing with Dr. Frankenferter. And then I just think about what Rocky looked like, and I keep thinking, damn, Glee really did a good job casting Cord Overstreet's character Sam as Rocky in that episode. And I had no frame of reference. I had no idea how similar they looked. It was just, I was having a whole moment every single time a song came on and it was in Glee. I was thinking back to the scene in Glee that I saw, and I'm like, fuck, man, they did a better job than I expected.
6 degrees of Glee, always.
Always. What's obviously, when we're thinking about this movie, it is a musical, right? It is theatrical. So that it's going to be the music, I think, that really makes this movie really special. I mean, and I know we all may have something to say about the music, but I really just want to nail it in that the opening number, science fiction double feature, even though it's not like a big part of the movie, it's the opening segment to the movie. It's the lips or the mouth that's singing the song. But it's a great song. Two, it references so many great classic sci-fi monster movies that you are going to like see the parody of throughout this movie, right? And it says it in the song, which is just so clever, right? Like it's referencing the Invisible Man, Forbidden Planet, It Came from Outer Space. You've got Flash Gordon, King fucking Kong. Like I was just talking about King Kong with Perfect Organism in our Discord, right? Like we were having a conversation of like what we thought of the original King Kong. And so like, it's just great that we're watching this movie that's like referencing some of these great old like sci-fi monster mashup classics. Also, there's just so many Dr. X, When Worlds Collide, Tarantula. Like it's just so fun. The music in this movie, I guess, gotta say it.
The music really is special for sure. I mean, Damn It, Janet and Time Warp, I think, are my two favorite songs. And honestly, it has such a great soundtrack on top of all of that. But one of the things that really stands out to me is actually the costume work in this movie, because damn, how iconic is this, right? Sue Blaine didn't just dress these characters. She ended up influencing an entire fashion movement. And when you think about what punk style ends up looking like in the UK, of corsets, pearls, fishnets, leather jackets. How crazy is it to be shaped by this movie in particular? And it kills me to know that you look at this attire, you look at this dress throughout the movie, and I only learned this later, but the cast basically froze their asses off filming this entire thing. That's crazy to me. They're dressed so skimpily. And you're having to give off zany decadence, and it's supposed to feel very like warm and liberating. But the conditions that they were in was absolutely wild to me. And Susan Sarandon got super fucking sick. So it's just crazy. Like, okay, you look great. You also are feeling terrible. But damn, the way those two things work together is just, this movie was a fucking time. You just can't do that now.
I think that was another surprising thing about this movie. Even like you may forget Tim Curry, and it's like fucking Susan Sarandon is Janet in this movie. And that's like, man, you've seen her in so many movies after this movie that you come back to this movie and you're like, wow, that was Susan Sarandon. That's awesome.
It's great to get your start somewhere, right? These people have range. It's so impressive. I think everybody involved in this. I think the costumes are a great call out. They did amazing work to really make things edgy. The set design, though, is such a weird complement to that, because we've got these really grandiose sets where you walk into a room and it's massive, filled with people, or maybe not, maybe an empty room, and we're entering from a staircase way up above. It's so visually interesting, and I could see how it would play really well if it were on Broadway. So now, it all makes sense. But it's epic. Every room that you walk into we've got different colors, we've got different designs, crazy sorts of like altitude differences as well. So it really keeps things visually appealing the whole time.
It's so true. The set design is great. And what's funny with the set, and I'll get to the set design because I want to come back to that too, but we talk about finding Easter eggs in movies, and we think about Easter eggs and references and nods in movies. But in this movie, there's literal Easter eggs in the movie, because they did like an Easter egg hunt on set as a cast, and I guess a few of the eggs were so well hidden that the cast never found them. So that's how the story goes. But there are literally Easter eggs in this film. So if you're watching like the moment, I think there's the moment where there's the throne that Riff Raff is sitting on. And if you look under the seat, there's literally an Easter egg sitting under the seat. So you can literally find Easter eggs in this movie, and not just little nods to other movies, but actual eggs, which is kind of hilarious.
Okay, but is that part of the live show experience? You have to also fucking walk up in that bitch with Easter eggs.
Gotta bring some Easter eggs. I don't remember the Easter eggs in the live show, but it very well could be. It's been a long time.
I'm having a vision, a pipeline vision. Tim Curry to Rocky Horror, Easter eggs. Tim Curry to Pennywise, It. Bill Skarsgård to Pennywise in It, with a whole fucking Easter egg scene, that fucking hallucination with Ben Hanscom in the library. The pipeline is pipelining.
It's wild. That's wild. Yeah, so there's some really fun stuff, some weird stuff going on in this movie. But yes, Mac, I love that you brought up the set design, because let's talk about that for a second. Dr. Frankenferter's castle, otherwise known as Oakley Court, was also used in a ton of other Hammer film horror flicks. Like, you may see this castle in things like The House in Nightmare Park, The Reptile, The Brides of Dracula, The Man in Black, all great Hammer films from really the 50s through the 70s. And I heard now you can actually stay there because it's an actual hotel or something. So maybe we got to check that out one day.
I just really want the atlas or the tour that Sean can put together where it's like the best attractions to fucking visit and in relation to all these movies we reviewed.
We got to put together a list for sure and like map it out.
One of those rooms, though, I think sets the stage for my favorite scene. And that's towards the beginning when this newlywed couple, or not even newlywed, this just newly engaged couple walks in. They're walking through the house and they finally make it into a room with people in it. And they look down and see that gaggle of humans staring back up at them. I mean, I think that was the best part because they have no idea what's to come. And as we get through that scene, it becomes more ominous.
Yeah, I 100% agree. The time warp scene is my favorite scene in the whole movie. One, it's like the best song in the movie. Let's just be clear. But it felt like more than a song, and it felt like a rite of passage. And it feels like you are with Brad and with Janet being introduced into this community and seeing it performed for the first time in context. And then also seeing how the narrator cuts in and tries to give you the clues on how to do the dance. But then watching our community get up and dance along on camera, it felt like I was also being initiated into something bigger than the movie itself. So great call, Mac. Incredible scene. My backup scene is actually Meatloaf being eaten for dinner. Because what a fucking hilarious way to acknowledge that Eddie is dead than by calling the subject and situation tender.
Oh man, it is a great moment. It's like one of the truly like horrific moments in the movie, like the reveal that they're eating like a piece of meatloaf, the singer, not the baked ground beef. It is a loaf of meat. That is true. It is true. It was just great though. The tablecloth like being whipped off the table and just seeing like the corpse of Eddie under there and everyone's shock. And the actual like lore of this movie goes is that the only person that knew out of everyone in that scene that was going to happen was Tim Curry. So like a lot of the reactions were actually shocked because they weren't expecting to see something in the table, which I think is brilliant, right? Whenever we can try to like play tricks on the cast to get genuine reactions, it just makes it really special. So yeah, it's a great scene for sure. But I think, even, we're talking about Meatloaf, we're talking about Eddie. Even, we talked about his kill being probably the best kill in the movie, and we've talked a little bit about why that kill was so special. And it is truly like the whole progression and the insanity of Tim Curry as Dr. Frankenferter, like in his face, you can see his facial reactions. Like, we don't see the actual kill. We're not getting a lot of blood, but we got everything we needed in Tim Curry's reactions as it was going through, like wherever, like icebox room or whatever the hell they were walking into. It was very strange, but really a great scene. I think it's interesting, like that whole progression of that scene, because Meatloaf as Eddie with this whole motorcycle segment and as he's playing like Hot Patootie, right? Like, I think him and the stuntman for that scene got into several different accidents while filming that scene. The stuntman drove the fucking motorcycle through the scene, including like up and down several street ramps. The bike fell off the top tier, landed upside down. It pinned the stuntman underneath. Meatloaf ran over, like trying to like lift the bike off of him. Like that was an issue. I guess he kind of like laid there silent for like an awkwardly long time before finally moving. But he was like, that's just what we do. You know what I mean? Because got to make sure that like I'm all good.
Can I say what I thought about when I saw that scene? I was thinking of Grease 2, because Grease 2 is Grease but with motorcycles. And any single time I see a motorcycle in a fucking musical, I'm thinking about Cool Rider. And I'm thinking about the song Who's That Guy? And then I'm thinking about the luau scene at the end of the movie when the Scorpions and Balmuto drive into the... Okay, I'm done. All right. I realize I'm ranting now, but musicals are fucking great, okay? Musicals and motorcycles, even fucking better.
This is so good. It's so good. But even in the middle of shooting, the this wheelchair hit a ridge at the bottom of the steps that sent Meatloaf flying towards the floor, shattering the camera and the windshield. I think his stuntman even tried to catch him, but the ramp caught the stuntman's leg and caused a serious fracture. Like, there's just Meatloaf got a deep cut on his head, which is funny because like he has like a deep cut in his head in the movie. I don't know if that was like fake or if that was part of the thing, but like, just thinking of like all the trouble that went into just this little part of the movie. You know what I mean? That was probably the hardest thing to get done. And you got to give it up for them for sure. But dang, so many great moments. How could we like not even think about like, we got to talk about the whole, it was such a hilarious like progression of Frankenferter kind of playing tricks on both Janet and Brad. He's like disguised as Brad, jumps into bed with Janet, reveals it. Then she's like, I'm kind of into it. Let's go. And then he does the same thing to Brad. I mean, come on. It's fucking hilarious.
The execution of it is hilarious, but the concept of it was not very hilarious to me at the time of watching it. And it was made funnier when it happens with Brad.
Yeah.
Not because it's happening to Brad, but because it's just like, man, okay, the logistics on this, like the disguise work and just fucking taking off a fucking wig like you're in Scooby-Doo is just funny to me.
Yeah.
So, like, for sure, the movie's funny. Okay. I just want to be very clear. I think this movie is funny, but I don't think this topic is funny. And that is something that I struggled with watching this. And this is where I thought, and again, this has less to do with the movie and more to do with like the internalized tension from having to navigate fucking bigoted, ignorant people all the fucking time who are like, oh, trans people this, trans people that, the gays are predators. I'm like, no, obviously we're not. And then you have a movie where it's like, okay, the fucking punchline in the movie is that this guy's a sexual predator. Okay. It was a lot there. It leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. And then I was like, damn, I must be overreacting though, because this movie is highly beloved. And I wasn't even like mad at it necessarily, because again, the comedy is exquisite. But then I looked into this movie after and I was like, oh shit, no, people actually find this to be super problematic.
It's a big one. You know, when you watch it, you have to have mixed feelings about it because like you said, on the one hand, you have the comedy. On the other hand, there's a lot of discomfort and awkwardness going on there. And you have to question, do we need it for the story to work? Could we just imply, you know, with a closed door? I don't know. It wouldn't be the same movie, obviously, but it is when you're watching it a bit uncomfortable. I think if you show it to somebody who's never seen it before and you don't tell them, you know, you're going to have a reaction on your hands very similar to Chris's.
Yeah. I mean, I think the reactions could be far worse. I think it could be far better. I mean, I think I'm very like in the middle on this, but again, Tim Curry's execution of this, and I do think Janet actually resists for quite a bit. But then it just becomes even funnier when it then happens to Brad. He's smoking a cigarette and then she's all mad at him like, girl, you just did the same thing.
Yeah, I think the whole progression was kind of, I think it was intended to be funny, but I think it was kind of funny the way it played out.
It's in some of these scenes that Tim Curry's hairdo reminds me of like Fairuza Balk for some reason. I keep seeing that in my head. I can imagine the curls transplanted there.
Tim Curry about to call the corners in this movie.
Right. But I mean, Tim Curry is just exquisite and like pretty much everything we've ever seen him in. I think of him from Legend. You know, we also mentioned It as well. And I think you've just got such powerful acting here. And this is at the start of his film career. That's insane to me. That is so crazy because even throughout this film, this character has to be cheeky. And he is able to throw in these like full facial, like half of his face winks with his eye, not just a quick wink, like a very controlled mannerism approach to this character, along with really powerful. I mean, the dancing moves this guy's doing here are insane. I think you would need to limber up for weeks beforehand.
Man, I think there's so much to say about all the characters in this movie for sure, and I definitely like want to jump into a lot of it. But yes, like if we're talking about Tim Curry, right, as Dr. Frankenferter, I think one thing that's very interesting when you think of like Tim Curry, right, often described as maybe almost the complete opposite of this character, right? Very thoughtful, very soft-spoken dude. His boisterous, I think, projecting mannerisms and booming voice in this movie are maybe part of like his inner demons that needed to be brought out for him to have like this dynamic performance. You know what I mean? And I think for this movie, his character that he brings to life, the character of Dr. Frankenferter, I think really, it is said in like interviews and stuff that it came to fruition when he began wearing like the high-heeled shoes, right? He just like really brought it in. And like the director, Jim Sharman, said he was like the man every woman wanted to be with and the woman every man wanted to be with. It was just like, there's something special that he does. And, that's just such an interesting thing when you can just like really just let yourself go and just be a completely different person to project like a really awesome character, For
sure. And I think what was really interesting was learning about the choices that he made. So he originally did this role on stage with a German accent and then switched to the voice that we have in the movie.
Yeah.
And they wanted to like fire him from the movie, or were heavily against this voice. And this was something that he absolutely was adamant about and stuck to his guns on, which was just honestly such a great move.
For sure. What's so interesting too is like they were considering other people for this role in this movie. Like they were considering Mick Jagger from the Rolling Stones, who wanted to play Dr. Frankenferter in this movie version. And it's super interesting because the director, Jim Sharman, he famously turned down an offer from 20th Century Fox for this larger budget and a longer shooting schedule if he would agree to cast more famous rock stars of the time. And so we're thinking of Mick Jagger, David Bowie, Lou Reed, Cher, things like that, or people like that. But he felt that the people who were really responsible for developing it from, just from the actual theatrical performance and the people that he had already been working with Tim Curry and things like that, he turned that down so he can keep the people he thought already knew how to do the performances the way it was intended to do, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I mean, that is loyalty. That is also a different side of the same coin that we see with like Rob Zombie casting all his friends and his wife in his productions. Adam Sandler doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's something to be said about loyalty and consistency and letting someone own that story throughout.
Yeah. Being able to keep like as many original cast members as possible is definitely something that's really cool. I think what's also interesting to find is like, how did Susan Sarandon find herself in this movie? Because she didn't even plan to audition to play the role of Janet. She had just stopped by the set to say hi to Tim Curry, who was a friend of hers, right? But while she was there, producers saw her and asked her to try out because they said everyone they auditioned so far were good singers, but none of them had made the character of Janet very funny, which is what they were kind of going for. They wanted a little bit of funniness to it. And Sarandon said no, because she said she can't really sing and she's, kind of afraid of singing, but they asked her if she could just sing Happy Birthday, I guess. And she did it. And they loved her and she got casted. So like right place, right time, I guess.
For sure. And how interesting is it to be a double threat or even a triple threat in this industry? Because I cannot sing worth a shit. I mean, I also can't act. Let me not be crazy here. But to be wildly competent, professional, talented in one arena and then just casually go on to something where you're like, oh yeah, I guess I can do that. It reminds me of, I know I've been talking about it a lot, Glee. Corey Monteith was not a dancer by any means, wasn't even really a singer, but could play the drums, and they liked his chemistry and his read, and they got him to work through his singing. And he also he's like the male lead of the show as Finn for so many years up until his untimely death. And it's just wild to think like these are people that you capture and you see the potential in, and then you work with to develop this even more. It's crazy to me.
Man,
it's one of those cases there. I just can't imagine other people in these roles. The characters themselves are very memorable. They're very unique. And to picture somebody else doing any of them, unless it's on stage, in that case, I get it. But like to imagine a world in which these people were played by other actors, it wouldn't make sense. It's a fun film. And I think there's a lot to pick apart. The casting's not one of them that they nailed, but it's a bit weird. And the story kind of shambles around a little bit. I think the worst part for me, aside from what Chris already discussed earlier, is it does feel a bit lost, especially in the last third of the film, where we're kind of meandering around with the plot. it's not really this leads to that. It's kind of like, well, how are we going to finish this? And yeah, I feel it a little bit.
Yeah, it's definitely a tough one for sure. I think this movie was, from what I read, originally intended to be shown in black and white until Dr. Frankenferter's entrance, and then only his lips were going to be in color and the rest would still be in black and white. And then at the end of the sweet like transvestite thing, it would literally go immediately into color, and it was supposed to stay in color until the superhero song at the end. That was the original intention or vision for this movie. And I think that there was some kind of 25th anniversary release on DVD that I believe did something similar to this, but ended up starting out in black and white and eventually went to full color after Riff Raff opens up the door revealing the Transylvanians. But let's be honest, this just isn't the same as originally intended, and the original vision could have easily been obtained, I feel like, if they were trying to go with something like that. So I would imagine that would probably be the worst part for me, is just not getting like the true vision of this movie, because I think it would have been kind of cool to go from black and white into color, or transition into color, kind of just like almost like thinking of like what the Wizard of Oz did and how cool that was like for its time.
Bro, we have the technology. That's so easy to do. I can do this right after this call.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. So why hasn't it been done is what I'm saying. So like that has to be the worst part. However, Chris, I think I would imagine the worst part for you would be the fact that Elvis Presley was the studio's first choice to play Eddie, according to Meatloaf. But apparently Elvis actually did not. Obviously, he didn't do it, but he did express interest. So like him not being the part, man, that might be the worst part for you, right? I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Holy shit. I had no idea. I mean, R.I.P. Elvis, you were dead 2 years later.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
Maybe for the best. Maybe you weren't in the great physical condition for this. But damn, Elvis Presley in this movie? Wow, I need to rethink this entire thing. I was still pretty stuck on my worst part of the movie, but damn, maybe it's different. Maybe you got me, Sean.
I don't know. You never know. I mean, it is cool, though. I mean, I think Meatloaf did a great job, right? I think the producers or whoever didn't even think that, like, Meatloaf could do the Hot Patootie song in one take. Like, they were concerned that he wasn't going to be able to do it. But literally, the professional that Meatloaf is, that guy just nailed it right away, like, without a beat. Like, didn't even stop, like, did the whole song, didn't even skip a word.
Can I confess something?
Yeah.
I don't really care about Meatloaf. Also, why does when I think of Meatloaf, why do I think about Jack Black?
Wow.
That's
if you want to know why people care, his name was Robert Paulson. That's why people care.
It means nothing to me, Mac.
He was endeared to us in his role in Fight Club.
Oh my god! I also don't give a fuck about Fight Club. That's why. Yeah. Okay.
There it is. Yeah. Right.
I think
that might be why.
I'd be hard pressed to find myself giving a fuck about anything to do with like Brad Pitt, Fight Club. Okay.
It's also the fact that like we were all trying to figure out like he would do anything for love, but he wouldn't do that. And it's like, what is that? Like, what wouldn't you do for love? Because you literally sang about it so passionately, but like, what was it that you wouldn't do for love, Meatloaf? We want to know.
Did Jack Black play Meatloaf in a movie? Because listen, I'm looking. So. Why is it? I'm just saying, I'm not the first person, because I'm looking in Google Images and there's a lot of people comparing them side by side, and they're not dissimilar. You know what I mean? Like they're right there.
That's hilarious. I mean, I see it. I see the similarities. I just think it's hilarious. That's all.
Yeah, I need to understand what their situation is. Okay, now we're just getting into pictures of Meatloaf. But I just don't really care about Meatloaf. And maybe if I was to care less about Meatloaf, maybe I wouldn't have been so bothered. But I really, honestly, the only thing that really threw me off in this movie is the bamboozlement of Janet and Brad in bed. It ends up being very funny. So this is like, I wouldn't even call it a nitpick by any means. But it was enough to make me feel like, oh, I don't like this. But again, hey, that's me and my own traumas. So who's to say? But I will say that I will be watching this movie again. I want to soak it in some more. There's a lot to chew on here, and I think there's a lot to chew on in terms of how this movie has aged 50 years later. Obviously, acknowledge this movie was made 50 years ago. Let's be chill about it. But it's wild to see how successfully it has endured the test of time. and how you can just reframe this and what it has done for so many people in so many communities to help feel less othered by society and more embraced by their people in these theaters.
And that's what gives it infinite rewatch value, is because not only is the film worth rewatching, right, but it's worth it for people to go see it live in different places, involved with different groups. I'm sure you could go to the same place, 2 nights in a row with different friends, and you would have a whole new experience. I think this film has that value within it as well. It's been probably a couple decades since the last time I watched it, but it's one of those where I'm like, if I get the next opportunity, it's going to be a fun time.
Yeah, it's definitely a movie that you want to revisit for sure. It's one of those things where I do end up watching it every few years or so. It's been a long time since I've been to a live midnight showing. I would love to do that again. And who knows, maybe we'll get to pull off this Hacker Slash live show. We'll do our own midnight showing. We'll rent out a theater. It'll be a great time. But yeah, it's just one that I love to watch. And I think it stays close to home because every year I'm listening to Halloween music. I have my own little Halloween playlist that I play every year, and that playlist involves multiple songs from this movie. So I feel like I'm always kind of living this movie at some point, even though may not be watching the film. But yeah, I definitely love watching this movie. If you haven't gone to a live show, go experience a live show. They're fun.
Okay, actually, no, I'll wait and hold my logistics question for the free side. But for now, there you have it, folks. The Rocky Horror Picture Show from 1975 has earned a Universal Slash. Now, we've certainly had a robust discussion here, but the conversation about how wild this movie is doesn't end here by any means.
It sure doesn't, and if you want to find out how you can do the time warp with us again and go even further than this episode, consider supporting the show and visit patreon.com/hackerslash, where you can enjoy even more of the show, including bonus content with early access, extended episodes with our free sides for the spooky season, movie nominations, and live shows.
We'll see you next time, folks, and remember, don't judge a book by its cover.
Let's go back. I'm cold and frightened.
Okay, so my question here for the logistics of everything. Are you a virgin if you haven't seen Rocky Horror Picture Show live, or are you a virgin if you just haven't seen it?
Oh, it's alive.
Fuck, so I'm still a virgin?
Technically, you could probably pass. It's a new age. We do things on like Zoom calls and WebExes and things like that,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm totally not a virgin. I've sexted. What the fuck? I mean, are you cybering? That's what it sounds like you're saying, Sean.
I'm just saying, we do a lot of things over like video calls now. And, I'm just saying, like, you could experience a gathering of watching this movie. People, like you said, in the Discord watch party were throwing stuff and yelling stuff, and they made signs, and it felt like you were getting the experience. You just weren't in the same room as everyone. So is it the same? It's close. It might pass.
Yeah.
It's a simulation.
I have to really stay far away from making this super after dark. I don't know why. It's just my head wrapped there as soon as you were talking about things on the internet. But okay, so I'm probably fine. I don't have to do any crazy shit if I watch this live in person.
No, you don't have to. I mean, also, it really depends on who you go with, right? Like, if we were going together, I ain't going to be like the one that's like, oh, right here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd be like, wow, this guy's fucking lying to y'all.
Yeah. It's a tough one.
Thanks for not being a traitor.
It's a tough one because that's how I got initiated, because I had never, I've seen the movie.
Break the cycle, Sean. Hurt people don't need to hurt people. This is how you continue cycles of generational trauma, by just paying it forward.
It's true. I too am not like the most like extroverted person, right? I'm definitely an introvert in a lot of ways. And so, I like to have a good time. I like campy movies. I like that kind of stuff. I've watched the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I've got like a cool group of friends. And, I just remember first Friday night, midnight showing. We're going with some friends. It was me and my buddy David. I think we were together, and we went with some girls, and we went over to the midnight showing at the Fall Brick Theater right in the valley. I just remember it. We're sitting in line. I'm like, wow, this is an experience. I'm smoking a cigarette, waiting for everything to start. There's a lot of people wearing a lot of things. It's interesting. I'm like, this is definitely going to be a different experience for sure. And we go into the theater, and I'm sitting there, and they're getting started. You know, the shadow cast members are getting up on the stage. It's interesting, right? Like, I'm okay, this is going to be fun. And then they start talking about, like, who are the virgins here? Like, who hasn't seen the movie? And of course, like, I'm not raising my hand. I'm just sitting there. I'm like, I'm chilling, right? Like, I'm just going to let that pass by me, let all these idiots say they're the virgins, and then I'll just enjoy the show. That didn't fucking happen, because the girls that we were with were like, this guy right here, this guy is a virgin. Pushed me up there, had to get on stage, did not have to get into my underwear though. So that was kind of nice. They did lie down like a bunch of girls on the stage with actual pies that were in their laps. And there was a small piece of bubble gum in the middle of the pie. And then everyone had to face first dive into that pie to dig out the piece of bubble gum. So that was the initiation. That was the initiation that I had going into my first Rocky Horror Picture Show.
That is wildly erotic and problematic.
Yeah. So, you know, wasn't dancing naked or stripping down into my skivvies, but it was an interesting time, to say the least.
Okay, Mac, how'd you lose your Rocky Horror virginity?
Listen, I mean, I've seen the movie, but I've never seen a live show. You know, I'm like you in this, Chris. I don't like the live things generally. There's too many people, right? I think the closest I've come, you know, theatrically has been, gosh, maybe like during Christmas time with the little Nutcracker. You know, that's the last time I saw something like that. And then, you know, experientially, the closest I've come is like a drag brunch that I didn't know was a drag brunch. I just thought I was meeting somebody for a brunch date, and she forgot to tell me a very important, you know, element, and it was very entertaining. Just like this, I'm sure this would be very entertaining. But yeah, if you don't like know what to expect, and it's thrust upon you suddenly, it could be a lot socially.
Oh, just to be clear, I love drag shows. They're so fun. They are a part of the culture. However, my introversion, it is at a spectacular level of high. And every single time I go, it's like I am a magnet for attention, because they can smell that I am uncomfortable in social situations.
Smell the fear on you.
Yeah, 100%. If I don't excuse myself and go get a drink, like, I just want to like tip and watch and woo from afar. I don't want to be involved and on the spotlight. I don't want that. I want to just linger in the back. Thank you so much. Incredible what you do. I totally get that, Mac. It can be a lot. I remember, oh gosh, the last girl that I dated, for her birthday, we went to a drag show in like the Fort Lauderdale area, and these girls were doing backflips. It was pretty fucking amazing. One of them fucking talked to me though, and like put a microphone in front of my face, and I was like, nope, sorry, you're great, thanks, bye.
See, I feel the same way. I've been to like one comedy show, and thankfully there was no, whatever you call that, like crowd work, nothing. Thank goodness, because if they had picked on me, I would have been like, no, thank you. And I feel like I would have the same reaction where, you know, Sean, you try to lie. I would swear up and down. I'd be like going into it, Googling, figuring out timeline wise, where could I have seen this? Which city, which state, what day, what night? Let me build this story up so that people believe me.
What do I say? Yeah.
I was 7 years old, and no. So
actually, what you don't know is that I was born at a Rocky Horror Picture Show. My mom went into labor at Damn It, Janet.
Oh my God.
No.
I mean, yeah, you know, nowadays anyone going in can definitely easily probably Google some resources to get themselves out of trouble. But, you know, back in the day, you don't have your trusty Googling friend, you know, to get you out of sticky situations. So, oh man. But
yeah, it sounds like you were in a real fucking sticky situation with that bubblegum. God damn.
Definitely. You know, it was an experience for sure, and nerve-wracking leading up to the whole thing. But, you know, it's those moments where you have to step out of your comfort zone that's where you really grow, they say. You know what I mean? So.
Was it like just a whipped cream pie, or was it actually like, you know, cherry or something like that?
No, it was like a big whipped cream pie. Yeah.
Okay. Real allergy safe, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, no crazy like actual fruit pies or pumpkin pies or anything like that. It was a time. It was a time. But, after that, didn't have to deal with that. The rest of the initiations from then on and on the other live shows were just pure entertainment, which is always a lot better than having to partake in some of that stuff. But it's just like you experience a little bit of it, Chris, right? It's just the ambiance of like being in like usually it's like not the best theater, right? It's like an older, smaller theater, so like it just got a vibe of its own, and it's just really fun. You've got the shadow casting, which is a whole nother element of these films, like where it's just kind of campy, kind of fun. Depending on who these actors are, they can really make or break the experience for sure. But the crowd, if you got a good crowd, not like a whole bunch of newbies, but you got like a good crowd of like, tenured veterans from going to these live shows, it's just a good time because they are the ones that are super prepared, right? When the wedding stuff is happening, we're throwing rice, maybe sometimes we're throwing confetti around. The theater becomes a mess. Like whoever has to clean up that theater, God bless them. But
we had in our live stream, we had Meat, who often hosts double features in watch parties in our community. And every few minutes, we just had an update on what was deployed. It was the rice. It was the toast. It was just so much. It was so great.
Yeah, the toast for sure.
You can go back and relive this because the chat archive is still there. So you could go back into the auditorium channel and you could review all the chat and all the nonsense that was going on during this watch party. It was pretty magical.
I bet.
Do they have a person for each character that's on screen?
Yeah, they usually. I was curious, do they just like play it in the background if they don't have someone that just let the movie fill in for that character? I think for the most part, all the major characters you're going to get somebody for.
Can I make a confession again? I know I confessed about Meatloaf already, but I was so fucking confused why everyone was saying asshole and slut for any time Brad and Janet were on screen. And it took me a little while to really understand. It took me a long time. I was so confused. That was the one thing where watching it in the Discord live with everybody, I just see the chat popping off and everyone's I'm like, wow, these guys really fucking hate Brad. Shit.
They're just like really just talking so much trash.
What did Janet do? All she's done was love Brad.
And then it's revealed.
Well, he did the same thing. We're not calling him slut.
Nobody's innocent here. Like everyone here, Brad, Janet, everyone's just getting down and having their time. So
everybody was fucking around and finding out.
For sure. Yeah, there's just so much fun. Like I remember when the rain scenes are happening. Some people bring newspapers, so they're maybe like holding newspapers above their heads, which is always fun. People will do the time warp dance, but in that rain scene, there was also a couple of performances that I went to where people actually brought water guns and were shooting water up in the air and shooting each other with water guns. So you're getting wet in that theater too. So man, what a good time. Like if you haven't ever experienced anything like that, and you're not too afraid to, and they still do them like that. Like I haven't been to a live show in probably 20 years. So, I mean, I don't know what they're like anymore. I'm hoping they're just as wild and crazy as they were in the past. But, it has been a long time. So who knows? They might have cleaned it up. There might be some rules and regulations going on here.
Classic 2025. Give me a live show of Sweeney Todd where someone just comes around serving little meat pie bits and then sprays you with some fake blood every time someone gets their throat slit.
Imagine. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel like we could try to do like some kind of weird live show for like Terrifier or something, do some wild stuff.
Oh, absolutely. One time we did Terrifier bingo and we also did we did a drinking game more so. People got lit that night in the Discord server.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. We're going to come up with something fun for the watch parties in October specifically. Maybe it's not a, live show type of situation the way that Rocky Horror has become, but maybe we can come up with something for sure.
Man, I think also like I'm just trying to remember all the different like wild things that you would do. Like we're talking about stuff that you would throw around and the kind of props that you would bring to the live show theaters, and we talked about some of the obscenities that you might yell out when you see Brad and Janet. But there's also some like really fun, clever things that I think I remember like saying, like there's like specific lines that you kind of talk back at or throw a word in between. So like I think there's like a moment where Janet yells like I'm coming with you, and then the audience is usually saying something like that'll be a first, you know what I mean, like that kind of thing. Or the owner of that phone, like there's the line of the owner of that phone might be a beautiful woman, right? And then the audience will be like, he is, you know what I mean? So like there's some really fun stuff that kind of goes over there. That whole dialogue right there is hilarious. I think Frank, there's a moment where he's like saying, and he's good for relieving my tension, but in between my tension, the audience is yelling sexual, you know what I mean? So like there's once you get used to the flow of these and you're participating and you know what to say and you cue it up and you're part of it, it's a whole nother experience.
Oh yeah, here it is. And fucking and sucking. It was one where I was like, what are you saying? Because it felt like it was also like so out of context.
Yeah, I don't, that one I'm trying to remember exactly where it is, but yeah, there's just so many fun things throughout from start to finish, honestly.
I feel like I wouldn't know what the fuck to do. That's just the first part. 2, I feel like I would be as lost as I was in mass looking for my little book about when the fuck I'm supposed to say things when the priest is talking, and also with you.
And also
up to
with
the Lord.
Oh gosh, they're going to have a noob friendly, like, you know, placard or something like that with all the responses written down. Like, hey, this is a different kind of show. We don't make everyone learn it, you know, the hard way. Here's your, just like they do in some Catholic churches. Like, all right, we know you forgot, so let's just give you this one sheeter with everything you need to say.
We know you don't pray.
It's been many years. We know that statistically. Here you go.
Sorry, I don't pray that way.
Oh man, I remember yelling Bullwinkle every time Rocky's name was mentioned. That was a kind of a fun like callback type thing. The whole dinner scene was absolutely hilarious. I think that, you know, we came here to discuss Eddie, and then you're like, dinner? And they're like, that's a rather tender subject. That's a rather tasteless joke.
Okay, now it makes me wonder what other kind of call-outs we can make for other horror movies. And Sean, I think we got to cook on this a little bit for October to really make it lit.
I think we could do it for sure. We gotta be intentional about it, but we can definitely make this happen with something fun.